Tonight, we defined Moshiach. What is the core of Moshiach? And when did we already experience this reality? So I just wrote that we're starting. You can make it for a very special night and opportunity. And the reason why I wrote that is because today, as I wrote in the WhatsApp invite, is the 24th of Teves, was the 24th of Teves, the Histalkus, the yahrzeit of the Alter Rebbe, whose work we study in the Tanya. Now, why is this especially opportunity, a special chance? Because we know that the passing of a tzaddik, on the anniversary of the passing of the tzaddik, of this most holy, godly person, everything he accomplished his entire life ascends to a new level. At the time of the passing of anyone, all we've done our entire life coalesces, so to speak. All the good we've ever done comes together. Hopefully this enormous shining light, a light reflecting a lifetime of accomplishment. That's why King Solomon said, Tov Yom Hamavis Miyom Hivoldo. Better is the day of death than birth. Birth, you're a question mark. When a person passes away and we see he's lived a good life, wow, that's a life. That's a life worth living. That's true for every person. How much more so for the person we call the tzaddik, the person who's completely godly, who has conquered, vanquished the evil inside of him, so it no longer exists. His whole reality is godliness. Not only does he only do, speak, think godly, his whole being is godly. There's no struggle. There's no evil. He's completely eradicated it, or at least eradicated it enough that it doesn't have a voice. So when such a person passes away, a person who had no evil in his life and only godliness, imagine the light that converges at that moment of passing. And we are taught that every year on the anniversary of the passing, this light, total sum of all the godliness created during an entire lifetime of serving God, this total godly energy ascends even higher. And the Alter Rebbe, whose yahrzeit was today and whose work we are studying, he taught us, from him is the teaching that all this godliness ascends and comes down to us, comes down to this world, because here's where it's at. Comes down to this world to bring salvation in the world, to create salvation. It's very interesting. The last two pieces of Torah we have from the Alter Rebbe, literally on the night of his passing, he passed away on a Saturday night. So between the conclusion of the Sabbath, after the Havdalah ceremony, and his passing, he actually wrote a short Hasidic discourse. And prior to that, he wrote a section that we have today in Tanya. And both this section of Tanya and this short Hasidic discourse that he wrote, both focus on the same concept, the enormous significance of the physical world. It's all here. It's even stronger than what we've been learning in our section of Tanya, because we were just learning in the previous chapter, chapter 35, that the most important thing is do those action commandments, because through the action commandment, your body is the wick for the flame of God's presence. So that's a very strong support for the significance of the physical, to do those action commandments. But at the end of his life, literally the end, the last Torahs he taught us, we're saying more than that. It's not just that the physical is a great or the strongest vehicle to the spiritual. The physical is where it's at. The physical contains God in a way nothing else does. So it's very appropriate then that the Alter Rebbe, talking about the accomplishments after a tzaddik has passed away, of course, circles it back down to this world. That all the godliness that's shining now on a level higher than ever before, higher than at the moment of his passing, are coming down to us, are coming down to help us, to create salvation for us. How do we access that light? Well, the more you're connected to the tzaddik, the more naturally it happens. And how to connect to a tzaddik who's passed away? The most direct way, learn his teaching. So therefore, it's a very, very special, auspicious thing tonight, last night, today, and tonight, to learn the teachings of the Alter Rebbe, to learn the inner dimension of the Alter Rebbe's teachings, this foundational work of the Tanya. So hopefully we all should see and experience, should know that we truly received from this salvation that's out there tonight, that's out there today, that was out there last night, and from all these hours where the salvation is in the world, we should see a difference. And that's what we're very fortunate to right now learn Tanya. So we are at the conclusion. We were just explaining the world as it was originally created cannot handle God completely revealed with no barrier. Actually, from this, we understand a very profound thought that all the barriers are God's kindness to us. We never think of barriers as kindness. To us, barriers is like barriers, things that block us, things that obstruct us, things that conceal. We don't want barriers. Who wants barriers? Barriers is God's judgment, the name Elohim. Creation is God's kindness, the name Havaya. And who wants barriers? We want God. But actually, based on what the Alter Rebbe is saying, and he explains this more extensively in the next section of Tanya, the next book of Tanya, called Shar HaYichud B'Emunah, that every barrier in place is God's kindness to us, is coming from God's love for us, because otherwise we wouldn't survive. We doesn't mean me, you, this pen, physicality. It means all of creation. No creation could survive unless God has myriads of layers of mass, of constrictions, of contractions. Nothing could survive. So God puts many barriers in place. His judgment, the godly name called Elohim, judgment, restriction, and as we're saying, a very great kindness to us. That's how creation can be. But all of these myriads of creations we learned was to get to us, to get to planet Earth, to get to a Jew choosing to serve God. And every time we make that choice to serve God, there's a gain in creation. Gain by gain, we're creating the reality of redemption, of Mashiach, which is happening only here because none of the upper worlds can handle it. Because only here is where Torah was given. And therefore here, as we live and learn Torah, we change the fabric of reality. We create a reality that can handle God direct. So that's impossible. Impossible. Impossible for any of the upper worlds. Impossible for any spiritual reality. Impossible for the highest celestial angel. And yet, through the living and learning of Torah for these thousands of years, Torah, we were taught, is strength. It imparts a strength to the creation, to this physical creation, to be able to absorb God without any barriers. And that's the reality of redemption. God without any barriers. Meaning, you might have learned the truth that in the times of redemption, the world will be full of bounty, health, wealth. True. Everyone will be happy. True. There'll be the resurrection of the dead. True. All that's true. We will serve God completely. That's also true. But the key essence, core of redemption is God completely exposed. Because that goes back to our initial point. Why did God create? For the redemption, to have a home, to be permanently expressed, freely expressed in his very essence. That's a home, and that's the core description, definition of redemption, permanent, complete revelation of the very essence of God. And how can we have this complete revelation of the essence of God? Because of Torah. Because of these thousands of years of us living and learning Torah, we're changing the reality of creation so it can do the impossible. It can handle God completely, permanently revealed on the level of the very essence of being. So that's exactly where we're up to. And now we're going to continue from that point. And it's known, that the days of the redemption, days in the plural, there are many stages within the process of redemption. And especially when we enter into the stage, when we have the resurrection of the dead will happen in stages. We are told that at the very beginning, initially, as soon as we have the complete redemption, right away, the most righteous will have resurrection immediately. Maybe some of you heard that the resurrection will only happen 40 years after redemption, which is true for the masses. But the Rebbe teaches us, based on a piece of Talmud, that the Jews that were so holy and godly and lived their entire life for redemption and were enormous catalysts in bringing redemption, they should be up there when we're having redemption down here. That doesn't make any sense. So all of those tzaddikim, all of those most godly people who worked for redemption their whole life, they'll all come back immediately. As we see, the Talmud says clearly that right in the very, very beginning, Moses and Aaron will be back with us as human beings. And then begins the process. After that first wave, the very first moment of the complete revelation, then we have a process that has a few factors: the righteousness of the individual, the more recently the individual passed away, gradually, every single Jew that ever lived will be resurrected. So the Rebbe says that the redemption in general, and especially when we speak of the resurrection, this is tachlis v'shleimus brias olam hazeh. This is the completion. This is the point of the creation of this physical reality. Shelekach nivra mitchilaso. That's why it was created. Why was the world created? For redemption. As we mentioned from the very beginning of this chapter, why did God create the world? 4 times it says in the Medrash. Why did he create? Because he wanted a home in this world. He wanted redemption, which is a very interesting point, because some people could view redemption as like the icing on the cake. You know, we did a great job. We served God. We kept his commandments. We studied his Torah. It wasn't always so simple. We did the right, not the wrong. So God gives us a really nice reward, beautiful reward, best cake ever. It's called redemption. No, the Rebbe says, that's not redemption. Redemption is not coming as reward. That is the point the Rebbe is making here. Redemption is not reward. Reward happens within redemption, later in redemption, but that's not the point. Redemption is the purpose of creation. In the Jewish month of Av, which is the month of the destruction of the temple, has therefore a lot of transformative powers to be the month of redemption. The name for it is Av, but the Jewish people call it Menachem Av. And Menachem Av has myriads and myriads of levels of meaning, one of which Lubavitcher has explained. Menachem alludes to the redemption, to the Redeemer, Menachem. As we're told, the name of the Redeemer is Menachem. Menachem, so redemption, Mashiach, the Redeemer. Av, one of the meanings of Av, Lubavitcher explains, means the roots of everything. Avua dechule. Like an Av is a father, because the father is the roots of the child. So the roots of everything. So Menachem Av, decoded, Mashiach is the roots of everything. The primordial vision prior to any creation was Mashiach. The sages say on the first verses of the Torah, in the beginning, for the first God created heaven and earth. The world was all chaos, confusion, and the Spirit of God hovered over the water. So this is the very first moment. Chaos, confusion, creation in its most incipient state, and the Spirit of God is hovering over the waters. And our sages say, what is that Spirit of God hovering over the waters? Zerucho shel Mashiach. This is the Spirit of redemption. This is the Spirit of the Redeemer. This is the Spirit of Mashiach. So the very beginning, what is the point and purpose of it all? Mashiach. That was the first vision. And therefore, when we have the redemption, now the world comes to its purpose. So it's not a beautiful reward. Reward sounds nice, and it's not like we're against reward, but it's not a beautiful reward. It's actually the point and purpose of everything. And therefore, the Rebbe writes in the footnote here, which is not a footnote, it's a side note. Nowadays, we have endnotes. We used to have footnotes. And in the times of the Alter Rebbe, he put them as side notes. So on the side note, we see the Kabbalah Schar. You're wondering about reward? You thought Mashiach was reward, and now you feel you're getting gypped? The Kabbalah Schar, Ikra be'elef hashvi'i. The reward is primarily in the 7th millennium. As the Arizal explained, primarily in the 7th millennium. Now, what does that mean? Again, since we just said Mashiach is not reward, then we're like, wait a minute, I'm getting gypped of all my visions of Mashiach at the time of ultimate reward. Don't worry, it's going to be good. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be better than perfect. It's going to be beyond anything you can imagine. The word good, the word perfect pales. We can't express what it's going to be. It's going to be that much. But that's still not reward. Reward means literally when we're paying you back for what you did. And we're told that is primarily the 7th millennium. What we mean by the 7th millennium is that right now we are in the 6th millennium. The world was created in 7 days. Each day created 1 millennium, 1,000 years. The first day created the first 1,000. The 6th day created the 6,000, which is the millennium we're in now. We're in the year 5,783 since creation, almost a little more than 3/4 of the way into the 6th millennium. Now, every day of creation impacted that 1,000 years of history, meaning the first day was a day of enormous powers. And that's why the first millennium, everything was huge and vast, and people lived hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And the first day was very chaotic, and the first millennium was very chaotic. And the second day was a separation of the waters, and the second millennium was a lot of separation, a lot of strict judgment. And with water, the Mediterranean flooded and killed 1/3 of mankind to try to bring them back to God after they began serving idols. We had the Great Flood that destroyed almost all of humanity, except for basically Noah and his family and Og. A enormous judgment with water. And at the end of this millennium, we had the Tower of Babel, the Babylonian tower that separated, as the waters were separated, that separated mankind. Mankind was separated into 70 languages, 70 groups, and that's when it all began. And so we see with every day of creation. Each day impacted and flavored the energy of that millennium. And the 7th day of creation was Shabbos, creating the 7th millennium, Moshiach. Moshiach is like one long, beautiful Shabbos. And now we're in the end of the 6th millennium, 5783. So what the Rebbe is alluding to here in this side note is that already by the time we reach the 7th millennium, we are deep into Shabbos. We are deep into Mashiach. We, at least by then, if not before, must be in the 2nd stage of Mashiach. Now, the 2nd stage of Mashiach could come before the year 6,000, but by then it has to come. That's the millennium of Shabbos, the millennium of reward. But before then, just as, of course, Shabbos we bring in early, and it doesn't come at the stroke of that sunset on Friday, we all have to bring it in early. So to now, at the end of the 6th millennium, it's already very, very, very overripe time, very, very overly late time to bring in that Shabbos already, to bring in Mashiach. So when we hit millennium 7, starting in the year 6,000, we already have to be, by then, if not before, in stage 2 of Mashiach. The stage where we receive reward, which means prior to the year 6,000, again, now it's 5783, prior to the year 6,000, we need to already have stage 1. Mashiach as we know it, not as reward, but as fulfilling the purpose of creation. What is that purpose of creation that will be fulfilled then? The complete, permanent revelation of the essence of God. Now, since with the complete revelation of Mashiach, all evil will be gone, out of a job, no commission, completely removed in a second by God himself. So there'll be no evil from the very beginning of the complete revelation of Mashiach. And at that same time, we'll have the permanent revelation, no barriers, of the essence of God. So since it's a time without evil, and since it's a time with a permanent revelation of the essence of God, obviously it's going to be amazing. We don't have to wait to the year 6,000 and see what happens and what's called reward. But as we proceed deeper and deeper, beyond even the purpose of creation, we can come to some of the other stuff, like reward. And that's why stage 1 could be viewed as the Mashiach, it still could be natural. Stage 2, we're told, no, that's completely miraculous. Stage 2 might come hand in hand with stage 1. At this point, it probably will, which means stage 1 and stage 2 are going to converge, and we will right away enter the miraculous era of Mashiach. But still, the ultimate reward will be in the 7th millennium. And that was the point there. Why does the Rebbe have to say that? Because he is so strongly emphasizing, don't think that's the point and purpose of redemption. Don't think redemption is to give us reward. Redemption is for a far deeper reason. Because otherwise you could say, okay, so I won't have such a good reward. I won't have such a good redemption. There won't be redemption right now. There won't be reward. The Rebbe says it's not about reward. It's about fulfilling the purpose of creation. And that we can't push off. And that we can never overemphasize. And that must happen. And reward, that will happen as well. But that's not the critical first component of redemption. Now the Rebbe goes on to say, now this concept, we have been describing Mashiach, redemption, which we explained. The critical core definition of redemption is permanent revelation of the essence of God. Lots of other great things happening, but the core is permanent revelation of the essence of God. Have we ever experienced anything like this? Sort of a teensy-tiny drop like this. What was that teensy-tiny drop like this? The giving of the Torah. The giving of the Torah was as close as we got, and the only time we got anywhere close to a Mashiach experience. Now, it was only a taste. It's not the real deal by any stretch, but we had it once. And that once sort of gives us a glimmer, little glimmer of what this means, the redemption, what this means on a spiritual sense. So the Rebbe explains, Hidichsiv, as is written, what happened by the giving of the Torah that was like Mashiach? Were there candies on the trees? No, but that's not a critical definition of Mashiach. Did we see the resurrection of the dead? No, but that's not also the most critical definition of Mashiach. The critical definition of Mashiach is seeing God. That's the critical definition. And almost, sort of, as close as man ever got to that, we got by the giving of the Torah. Hidichsiv, as is written, Ata haresa ladas, you have shown yourself to make known Ki Havaya Hu Elokim, that these two names of God, Havaya, Hashem, the most powerful of the seven names, and Elokim, are actually one. Ein Od Levado. There's nothing else. This verse, which is a very famous verse that Hasidus uses very often to express this concept and other similar concepts, Ata Haresa, you, God, have shown yourself. You exposed yourself. Ladas. Often ladas means to know, but sometimes, as in this case, it means to make known. You exposed yourself. God, you pull back a lot of barriers by Mashiach. You expose yourself. Why? Ladas. To make known something. You wanted to teach us something we could only learn by experiencing it. What were we supposed to experience? Ki Havaya Hu Elokim. Havaya, God's most essence name, refers to God beyond nature, beyond world, beyond Hishtalshalos, beyond whatever we're talking about. The beyond dimension is Havaya. And Elokim, whatever we're talking about, is the within dimension, the limited dimension. Elokim is nature, Havaya is beyond nature, Elokim is 7, Havaya is 8, Elokim is judgment, Havaya is kindness. Elokim always means constricted version, and Havaya means the expansive, limitless version. So we view it as sort of two realities. The within nature reality, limited, not visible, and Havaya, beyond. No, you showed yourself, so we should know something. Haresa ladas, you expose yourself to make known to us that Havaya and Elokim are the same thing. It's all one. It's all God. There's nothing but God, as comes the punchline of the verse, Ein Od. There's nothing else, milvado, exclusive of him, exclusive of God. The Jews saw it. We say it. We teach it. We study it. We review it. This completely counterintuitive concept that we speak of so often in Tanya. But by the giving of the Torah, we saw it. We saw there's nothing but God. As Fruma wrote in the comments, she is correct. It was such an intense sight that our souls left our bodies. So we all experience resurrection of the dead, and that is absolutely true. And the Alter Rebbe will discuss that as we turn the page. But at this point, the Rebbe is still speaking about the enormity of this revelation for this purpose. This was the purpose. Just like we said, was the core definition of redemption. Redemption means God exposed. The giving of the Torah, 3,300 some years ago, God exposed himself. So we should know it's only him and there's nothing but him. We all experienced it. We all were there. We happen to be their souls and bodies because we are a resurrection of that generation. We, the women now bringing redemption, are those women that brought redemption then as well. But every single Jew was there. If not souls and bodies, there were only about 3 million of us alive then. All the rest came down as souls. We all were there. We all experienced it. Well, you could say, well, a soul, what does a soul need this for? Souls are above. Above, they don't see it either. God's always concealed. Everyone needs cloaks, even above. But by the giving of the Torah, God pulled back a lot of veils. Not all by any means, but a lot. And that's from a sense to such a degree that all of our souls left our bodies for that same reason. But we experienced it. So every single one of us deep in the core of our soul knows there's nothing but God. We saw it. As the Rebbe goes on to explain, her Esa Mamish, you literally showed yourself, B're'iyah chushis, with a physical sight. When the Rebbe says, with a physical sight, meaning their sight, like, oh, now I see what you mean. That's what we can say. Oh, now I see it. Like, now I get it. Now I understand it. That's not what we mean here. We don't mean an intellectual sight. We mean a physical sight. We mean our physical eyes saw God. As the Rebbe says, K'dichsiv, as is written, V'chol ha'am royim es hakol. And the entire nation saw the thunder. That verse also, Chassidus speaks about quite a lot, describing the giving of the Torah. And the whole nation saw the thunder. Well, that's a weird sentence. Of course, it's a weird sentence. You're supposed to hear the thunder. We see the lightning and we hear the thunder. And by the giving of the Torah, there was lightning and thunder. And the people heard the lightning and saw the thunder. Usually what we see, that's what's close to our reality. That's like, oh my gosh, I saw it. I mean, I know it's true. I saw it. What we hear is a little more remote from us. It's more distant. We hear it. We heard it. Yeah, I heard it. It's not the same as I saw. So in our normative reality, what's really close and totally real and concrete is physicality. So that's what we, so to speak, always see. That's close. That's real. That's our world. And spirituality, we hear. It's a little more distant. It's there. It's a little more remote. So we normally see the lightning, see the physical. That's what's close and real in our world. And we hear the thunder. That's a little further, a little more detached, a little more remote. But by the giving of the Torah, it says they saw the thunder. The lightning they heard. Which means by the giving of the Torah, that which is normally only heard, the spiritual reality, was so close to them. It was so tangible, they could see it. And what's normally seen, the physical world, retreated a bit. V'hainu, meaning to say, why did this happen then? Why was this so? That you literally saw God. Because God's will was revealed through the 10 Commandments. Because the 10 Commandments embody the entirety of Torah. Shehi pnimis ritzono yisbarach v'chachmaso, meaning the inner will, the inner dimension of God's will and wisdom. Ve'ein sham hester panim klal. And in that space, God's inner will and wisdom, there's no barrier. So when He gave us His inner will and wisdom, we had no barriers either. Moshiach Exposed, as is written, Ki ba'or panecha, with the light of your face, nasata lanu Torahs chaim. You gave us the Torah of life. Whenever we have the term face, as we've actually learned this several times in Tanya, face in Hebrew is the same etymology as inward. In English, it doesn't work. Face, inward, two different words. But in the holy language of Lashon HaKodesh, panim means face, and pinim, I just changed the vowels, I kept the same letters, means inward. Panim, pnim. So whenever we speak about God's face, we mean His inner reality. Ba'or panecha, with the light of your face, with the light of your inner dimension, you gave us the Torah. You didn't have to give us your whole self, but you chose to. You didn't have to give us your inner self, but you chose to. You chose to give us your very self. And that's why it was a Torah of light, to such a degree that at that moment, there was no possibility of death. From then until the Jews sinned with the golden calf, there was no death, because you gave us all. You gave us your inner will. You gave us your inner wisdom. You gave us your very essence and being. That's only life. That's only God. No room for anything else. And therefore, as from a commented a few minutes ago, we literally lost our existence completely. We couldn't handle it. We saw it. We experienced it. It's within our psyche, but we couldn't handle it because the intensity of God's little bit of revelation of self was so much. Imagine like a vacuum that just sucks you in, right? Pulling you all in. Well, all of those souls were just like this huge magnet of that bit of revelation of God's self. Kimaimar Razal, as a saying of our sages, shall call dibur parchanishmasan chulei. That with every divine utterance, the souls flew out, went to God. So then what happened? It was complete, gone. The entire people, we all perished. We said the giving of the Torah is in a tiny way like redemption. So just as we have this core definition, revelation of God, we also have a very critical component, resurrection of the dead. Who were those dead that were resurrected? Us. All of us. Every single human being that was there. With each statement, the souls left, and God restored our souls with the same dew that we're going to use to revive the dead. But then God restored the souls with the dew that will be used to revive the dead. What is that dew? Where's that elixir? What's the dew of the resurrection? V'hu tal Torah. That dew is Torah. That dew is actually Hasidus, as is explained in Hasidic discourses. Shenikra ois. Because that's the real strength. The core strength of Torah is that essence dew, that life of Torah. Life so powerful, it revives the dead. So a certain dimension of Torah pulled our souls away from us. And a deeper dimension of Torah put our souls back. The 10 Commandments, that revelation of God's self, pulled the souls away. And Hasidus restored the souls back. And this happened, this dynamics, the leaving and the restoring, as we call it Kabbalistically, Ratzu V'Shuv, the souls leaving, the souls being put back. That was the experience of the giving of the Torah, akin to this idea of, but of course much smaller than, Moshiach. So someone is asking now, of course, the great question, which is, if that little revelation compared to Moshiach took away our souls from our bodies, how are we going to handle the real deal? And is it Hasidus that will keep us alive? So the answer is no. This is what the Rebbe said earlier in the chapter that we touched on at the very end of last class, and now the Rebbe is alluding to it again. From at the time, let me say it a little more clearly, when the Torah was given 3,300 some years ago, the world could not handle the revelation of God. 5,783 years ago with creation, the world could not handle the revelation of God. Just this world, every dimension. That's why I said earlier that all of the Jews experienced the giving of the Torah. Every Jew that was alive then, 3 million of us, including all of us, because we were living then. Not just the 3 million that were alive then. Every single soul that ever was or will be came down to planet Earth to experience the giving of the Torah. And therefore, the entire Jewish people experienced and saw God. And I said then that you could wonder, what do these souls need to come down for? They're above. I mean, don't they see God all the time? Not that way. Because above, in any supernal realm, God is cloaked. God has to be cloaked. Otherwise, that realm wouldn't exist. So the souls above don't experience what we experienced by the giving of the Torah. We weren't ready to handle it. The world hadn't shifted. The Torah hadn't been given yet. So the same way by creation, the world could not handle the revelation of God. 2,000 plus years, almost 2,500 years after creation, the world still can handle the revelation of God. Now, of course, the revelation then was not the complete revelation. It was a little bit of Chachma of the world of Atzilus. But we couldn't handle it. But since then, 3,300 years, we have been living Torah. We have been learning Torah. We have been studying Torah. We have been speaking Torah. And every time we do so, every word of Torah we say, every word of Torah we study, every word of Torah we live, we change the fabric of the world. The Rebbe at least 3 times, we're just now up to this word to say it one more time, reminded us in this chapter, Torah is called ois, strength. What is the strength of Torah? To change the reality that we can handle God exposed. None of the upper worlds can handle God exposed. That's why redemption's not coming there. In our world, when the Torah was given, we couldn't even handle God a little bit exposed. But now we will all handle it. The physical world will handle it, not the revelation like by the giving of the Torah. The real, complete revelation of God's essence. The giving of the Torah wasn't God's essence. It was a very high level, highest level of highest world within our galaxy. Chachma of the world of Atzilus. That's nothing compared to God's essence and being. And that's what we're going to have completely revealed. And this entire physical world will handle it. How? Because Torah is strength. And it has changed and strengthened this world that we can do the impossible. Impossible. We can handle God revealed. And that's why we couldn't then, and we will now. So what we just said, stopping at this point, again, Hu tal Torah shenikra ois. This is the doom of Torah. Torah is strength. We keep coming back to that theme, and we're not done. The Rebbe keeps reminding us of that concept. You should know Torah is strength. Torah is strength. There's something he wants for us to take from that concept. Torah is the strength of the world. Torah changes the fabric of the world. Torah enables the impossible to happen.